During this integration of my near-death experience with my day-to-day life here, I've had the experience of seeing things in a more non-linear way. I want to share my perspective on that today, and next time I can give some specific examples. Let's start with a comparison between the two ways you can process information, linearly and non-linearly. Who robbed the bank? Well, the job of law enforcement is to discover who robbed the bank. Linear thinking pursues answers through a step-by-step process that has a go, no-go date at each step, at each conclusion of every exercise of analysis, and one in which you decide whether to move forward to the next one or go round again. Thinking this way lends itself to very binary thinking. Things are very black and they're very white. Thinking that something is either this way or that way, seeing a new opportunity to reach a compromise is elusive because you're just not looking, like I said, in between the polarities of yes and no, right and wrong. So the patterns of information between the polar opposite positions remain invisible, whereas opportunities are there for those who see them. This inside-the-box thinking stresses defining the problem, which means defining the box, and then working on it, usually from the inside. This is how most of the world thinks. We wake up, we have our morning routines, followed by our work routines, concluded by those we do when we get off work. Rinse and repeat. On the other hand, why do people rob banks? After studying enough bank robberies, someone may start to see patterns and then ask this more fundamental question. This type of nonlinear thinking brings understanding from a viewpoint of problem solving which extends in an outward expansion spiral. This provides multiple starting points from which one can study the problem, and such thinkers can walk around the problem and find different ways to penetrate it rather than trying to just solve the surface symptom. Most world problems are caused by other problems stacked on top. Linear thinking solves problems with an iterative, repeating process, going around and around in a circle. Nonlinear thinking goes deeper, spiraling through different perspectives, revealing other aspects of consideration. This is a more evolved way of thinking. It's also a more natural way to think when you're being present. Your awareness of this emerges when you realize you aren't using your memory to understand things. You don't need a memory to perceive a complex and dynamic pattern moving in front of you. When you're really present, it's with no memory of the past or anticipation of the future. It's with your intuition. How much calculus did early man need to throw his spear accurately at the mammoth? Nonlinear information processing is a more sublime, quieter view of things. We stand back and we observe and we listen. When someone speaks, their words give us answers, but from their nuance, inflection, and body language emerge patterns of meaning. We realize that the silence between their words is filled with equal amounts of information as the choice of words themselves. Add to this their inflections and body language, and you have a more complete picture. When we chew on it slowly, we discover new layers, and with each consideration, there are more and more shades of gray between absolutist binary thinking. And the more still we are, the more power in the unmanifest potential we see, while the rest of the world celebrates cathartic explosions of attachment and vice. I believe God could care less about most of the crap we get all twisted up about. How we live our lives says how close we are to Him. As we walk to Him, He runs to us. If we're intent on doing something others judge as bad, we won't be prevented from doing so. We will see how that path and those choices work out for us. I could imagine God saying, when you're done, come back. I'll be right here. I'm not going anywhere. Also, trying to please everyone, trying to follow many rules which seem arbitrary to you, means you're living someone else's life, not yours. Here is how I've characterized some aspects of linear and nonlinear approaches. Within linear thought, we have answers, purpose, content, the manifest, words, and logic. In nonlinear thought, we can characterize things like understanding, meaning, process, the unmanifest, symbols, and vision. Answers give rise to purpose, and understanding gives fertile ground for meaning. Answers are usually the fruit of linear procedural steps, whereas understanding provides a nonlinear breakthrough, an aha moment, recognizing a pattern. A similar relationship exists between content and process, manifest and unmanifest, and words and symbols, not to mention logic and vision. For example, I'm thinking of a physics lecture I once attended. Our professor was discussing how differently a trip taken at relativistic speeds, those approaching the speed of light, would look to the traveler and, again, to an observer standing back at the launch pad. Skipping to the end of the high-level overview, he wrote Einstein's simple equation E equals mc squared. I'm sure you've all seen it. If you plug in values to that equation, you'll eventually see that if you could propel mass toward the speed of light, 186,000 miles per second in the vacuum of space, that mass would appear to increase toward infinity. Its time relative to us would appear to contract toward zero, and the distance between it and whatever far distant target it was heading to would also contract toward zero. Which is another way of saying that if you could go the speed of light, you'd be everywhere there was to be instantly and weigh everything there was to weigh. You'd be one with the universe. If you hear that and are spiritually inclined, it more than boggles the mind. If you take it a step further, it also says that for light itself, there is no time. Perhaps this is why once we take leave of the mass of our bodies and enter realms that have less or no mass, time flows differently. In the East, it's taught that each higher plane has a slower passing of time until a still point is reached in which time doesn't pass at all. Back to the physics class. Having conceptually stated his case, the professor then wanted to drive home the importance of using different frames of reference to understand the problem, how things might look to the fast-moving traveler and to the at-rest observer. To best demonstrate this, he used two different sets of coordinate systems. One that locates you in two dimensions. Kind of like just our day-to-day life. We know we're going to go straight and then we're going to turn left or right. That's two dimensions. And then Z, which could be altitude. How high do I go? How low do I go? All right. The professor proceeded to use the two-dimensional coordinate system to prove his theorem. And it took about 3 whiteboards and most of the class's time to do so. Finally, he proved his point, and we all thought that was cool. Then he looked at his watch and said, "Oh, and here's how you do it in 3 dimensions." Well, we all thought his watch must have stopped because there was only 5 minutes left to the class. But he returned to the board, found one small unused area of the board, probably pre-planned, and he wrote 3 equations in the 3-dimensional coordinate system. And with that, those 3 lines, he proved in 3 minutes what it had taken him 50 minutes and in the entire, all the whiteboards in the room to prove. By stepping outside the 2-dimensional world of one coordinate system to the 3-dimensional world of another, he could say in that short a time what it took all the other time to say. This drives home how important it is to look at things from different angles in search of the highest, most comprehensive, and fundamental perspective. There is a similar difference in looking at things from the viewpoint of process and content. When you watch a movie, think of how most people watch for the content, the movie star, the genre, story, whatever they like that establishes an emotional connection to that story. Process is where you would watch the movie from a perhaps more technical point of view, analysis of the script, the use of music as a cue to understanding the scene, camera angles, lighting, composition, the change of focus of the lens on the subject, subtext in the dialogue, and so on. You measure the impact of all this by the reaction of the audience and the critics' ratings. In analyzing the film this way, its content becomes secondary in importance. But you do it enough, and you just might learn how to make a movie. By looking at patterns like this, you discover the underlying formula that things and events use for their birth, their duration, and their exploration. DNA might look like a thing, but the information inherent translates it into a lifelong process of unfolding. You have to disengage from the excitement of the moment to see the patterns operating underneath, manifest and unmanifest. There may even be a changing percentage between the two, depending on where on the continuum your frame of reference is. The higher planes are called the sublime, and the lower planes, including the earth, are the manifest, the intense, defined by that. Our attention is drawn to one or the other. The excitement of a loud party, adrenaline-driven sports, attractive people we want to connect with, wealth, power, so on, or to a quiet, meditative existence, or maybe a life with an alternating, balanced experience of both. Whatever path of life you choose, eventually what comes next is less of a surprise and eventually predictable to the point of boredom. Just because you see the shallowness and predictability of the world doesn't mean your eyes are yet attuned to the more subtle worlds beyond this one. Until then, you may be drawn to books that take your thoughts in this direction and to new friends who are also loosening their grip upon the world. Eventually, the time will come when the richest foods, strongest wine, and most beautiful forms will simply not hold your attention like they used to. As we think, so we become. You come to appreciate the subtle over the intense, seeing the invisible threads pulling things in and out of viewable existence. You become sublime yourself. Returning to our books on mysticism in the higher planes, as we begin to experience these more subtle worlds, we begin to appreciate our spiritual growth as woven into a path that takes us from places of greater manifestation to those of lesser or finer manifestation. The Tao Te Ching says the formless gives rise to the formed, and the primordial was before that which came into the duality of yin and yang. John Milton, a brilliant 17th century English poet and philosopher, suggested the highest form of God is that which is unmanifest. We begin to sense the power of potential. I sense that this hair-splitting continues into the powerful difference between words and symbols. When you sit down to a lecture, you can imagine there are people in the audience who may know the subject so well that they could predict every sentence the speaker will say. For them, those who came to hear something new, the hour-long lecture may be painful, waiting for the speaker to arrive at every point they already know. But when presented with a symbol instead of words, each person sees and experiences in accordance with his or her own background and inclinations. The people who already know the subject are not slowed down in their intellectual digestion of symbols. In this way, to each their own. Think about it. Dreams are more symbolic than literal. It's not often that you will have a conversation with someone when dreaming, as their mere presence suggests something to you, then perhaps their actions or yours. If you dream that you're taking a college test for which you're unprepared and are also sitting in class with no clothes on, you don't need a lot of explanation to understand this is a concern about being prepared for one thing or another. If you fly in a dream, you may enjoy the ecstasy of being free from limitations. And again, is there a lengthy discourse or even a magic word that is the gatekeeper for that experience? Probably not. The language is symbolic. I believe that the language in the higher realms is also symbolic, as is music in this realm. And the quieter our minds are in our perceptions of these symbols, the more accurate our intuitions of their meanings are. Our projected desires or fears influence our perception of reality with symbols. A Rorschach test proves the point. The first time I ever saw one of these ink blot tests, it made me feel like I was seeing an explosion of possibilities. Standing back to look at this, you have to wonder as we project onto others our desires, asking, what can you do for me? And then interact with them to find out. What happens when you wash all your makeup off or you lose your youth and your vitality? When your number of choices and opportunities wane with age? How then are we symbolized? I say this to indicate that it is in our nature to communicate in symbols and to impart meaning even to the simplest things. We want things to be rich with information, a discovery into themselves. We understand the spoken word has a certain amount of information, but there's so much more to add when we consider body language, nuance, inflection, emotion, vocabulary, and even the perfectly timed pause. Understanding the differences above provides a foundation upon which to see with nonlinear understanding. It allows the worldly appreciation of life here, just like everyone else enjoys. It also allows seeing the intersection of probabilities before choice collapses one of their waves into a moment of physical reality. The will is free until it acts. The longer you can stand within that state of potential, the more power you build up of your own. You've felt it when you get two competing but equally great job offers or social engagements. The longer you put off deciding, the more excitement builds for both, until you're both about to pop with anticipation. To a point, the longer you wait to choose, the greater the anticipation on the part of the other parties as well. Knowing when to choose is an art developed through practice. It's like creating a vacuum and then aiming it with your intention. As you think, so you become.